Thank you for joining us for our first annual Recognizing Excellence, Honoring Female Veterans Award Ceremony. This is a big deal for our organization. I will say, when we were making a plaque for the award winner, I was almost as excited that Ladies of America was on the plaque. It was like our award, because it's taken a lot for us to grow to get to a point where anyone would even pay attention to what we were actually doing. And we like to think that now we're starting to make a dent and showing people the capacity that we have for change and truly, ultimately, to make improvements in major issues facing our country and, frankly, the world. This weekend, I was watching a film called The Late Quartet, and in the film, an elder musician told a story about an experience he had as a young musician meeting an award-winning composer. After performing for him, the award-winning composer told the young musician he had done an excellent job, even though this musician knew he had not. Many years later, when chance brought the two men together again, the musician asked the composer about the day he had complimented him, and he said it just felt so disingenuous, asking why he had done it. The composer defended his compliments, explaining that he had not been disingenuous, but rather he found that the then young musician had added personal flair and uniqueness to certain scores he truly believed deserved praise. The lesson is that we can measure success by what's missing or by what's here and great. So, while I would have loved for you all to have had silver platters and white gloved servers, it wasn't possible. But that doesn't mean that today isn't extraordinary. We selected the National Press Club because we truly wanted this to be a beautiful afternoon, honoring the valor of the women nominated around the room, and as an offering for all of our nation's female veterans. Consider the boxed lunches, this is a joke I got from a friend in the room, MREs. With a little humor and a little humility. Now we'll begin this afternoon with music by Ms. Rhea Jean Linster, who once performed for President Ronald Reagan at the White House and trained and performed with the Boston, Cleveland, and National Symphony Orchestras, all before graduating from high school. Rhea Jean has performed internationally, including at the annual state dinner in Lima, Peru, and performed for Vice President Biden at the inauguration festivities in January of this year at the Kennedy Center. Furthermore, and I didn't know this, she is the daughter of a U.S. Army captain who served in the Vietnam War. Please help me in offering a warm welcome for Rhea Jean Linster.
Please rise for the national anthem.
to invite Twyla Garrett up to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm in 4 different time zones, so good afternoon. Can we all recite together? I pledge allegiance to the flag for the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
You can stay. I'm actually going to bring her back up because we are going to begin our panel. They'll continue disseminating lunches if they haven't completed that already. But Twyla is a mentor to me and a business owner, very successful business owner and instructor. But she also has she has employed several veterans, and so today we're going to have her really talk about readiness of veterans for employment as part of our panel discussion on aligning military skills with workforce needs. And then I'd also like to invite up Stephanie Gibney, who is actually also one of our nominees for today's award. She is a veteran, obviously, and also a business owner. And she felt particularly strong about education and our veterans utilizing the GI Bill, and if they aren't, why? And also, what did you call the rank? I don't know enough about this, but the ranking system within.
Essentially, I think that we have to make sure that while they're in, at some point you make sure that the minimum education requirements for a job in the civilian world, that they're meeting those education requirements. We can't just look at time and grade or sending them to military programs that aren't recognizable in the civilian world.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then finally, please help me welcome also Jasmine Booth, who is, I didn't even know this until this week, one of CNN's 2013 heroes. And also founded Final Salute, a veteran as well, who withdrew her name as a nominee in order to serve on the selection committee, which was wonderful. And I was listening to her and I thought, this is exactly why she's been so successful, because she's so giving. She's been so supportive of this particular event. And she said, I've won enough. There's so many people out there, and it sounds like she's bragging, but it was so humble and so wonderful. And I knew that moment. I was like, amazing. So Jasmine, her nonprofit is geared towards female veterans, homeless female veterans, and she's done substantive work in that area. And she's also relatively new to working with Veterans Affairs, right? So with that, I'm actually going to let each of you take a few moments to both introduce yourself, anything that I might have missed, but also what's particularly important to you in regard to aligning military skills with workforce needs.
I'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Twyla Garrett. I'm a serial entrepreneur in the sense that I own a trucking company, some nightclubs, some restaurants. But my base company is a Homeland Security disaster preparedness firm located here in D.C. I supported the warfighter my entire life. I wasn't in the military. I'm a daughter of an Army personnel person, and so grew up in that environment, but we employ a lot. I used to be the Naval Academy's accountant. I also was the Navy SEAL's deputy comptroller, and then I opened my business about 13 years ago. So my entire career has been supporting the warfighter, working with the Department of Defense and seeing that mission readiness criticality be present. So I've seen individuals go in, make rank, and I've also seen them come out and be consultants, and now I'm on the other end hiring them as consultants. So the reason I'm here today, and it's dear to me, is because we're right in the midst of doing some hiring. We're right in the midst of launching. I have an office in London, I have an office in San Diego, And we're looking for those best of breeds and best talents. And we've had some, situations where a lot of the military are coming to us, and we just recently won 3 contracts with the VA to train for financial literacy. And we were a little shocked when we won that contract when we came in and they told us, and literally they said, everybody you're training has to start at a 6th grade to 8th grade reading level. And I said, but these are individuals that have spent 16, 17 years in military uniforms. And they said, again, everything that you do on this contract has to be at a 6th to 8th grade reading level. And we found it very difficult when we kicked off the Loma Linda, LA, and San Diego contract. As they were moving forward and we were training, these individuals have tremendous abilities, but are they portable in porting over to the commercial side of the house? And how they actually sell themselves is a lot different. So my key here today is to express what we've gone through and what we hope to be able to learn. Especially, I'm very interested in our other panelists and how the information they have on the nonprofit side, because I like to see how we can better posture ourselves and to bring in more veterans, have them well trained, and be able to compete with those individuals that are coming out who are very strong competition candidates for them, but to be able to make sure that they can compete and understand that whole, because I grew up in that environment, that military rank and command and control, it's in my blood, and I see it's in their blood, but it's definitely, you have to differentiate that when you have a corporate culture. So how to be able to bridge those two.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Gibney. I own Accounting for DC, which is a local tax and outsourced accounting firm in the district. Your thoughts probably align well with mine. I am the daughter of 2 retired Army parents. My mother, like myself, joined at 17. My mom now is an SES2 with the government, and she obtained both her master's and her bachelor's through the military while she served. My mother retired very young. You have to think she pulled a full retirement before she was 40. My father, on the other hand, did not utilize he did not obtain a degree while in the military. So when he retired as a meter, and he got a job as a meter reader. A lot of walking for a middle-aged man. So my thought process is we've got to really push people to obtain degrees that will allow them to compete in the civilian world. I was in the service, and the entire time my mom said, go to school, leave at least with a 2-year degree, and I did not. So when I left after my first enlistment, I got a job at McDonald's and went to the local tech school. So education while you're in is a huge thing that we need to be stressing for the enlisted personnel.
Good afternoon. I am Jazz Booth. I am a 13-year Army veteran. I am also the wife of a former combat Marine, and I just attended my oldest son's graduation from Air Force Basic Training this weekend. So service is a tradition in my family. I also have a 3-year-old, so maybe he likes water, so maybe he'll do the Navy when he grows up, then we'll have all of the services accounted for. So a little bit more about me. In 2005, I was a single mother. I was headed to Iraq. I had just relocated to New Orleans for 4 months after being in St. Louis. In August, I lost everything to Hurricane Katrina. And the very next month, I got diagnosed with aggressive head, neck, and throat cancer. And so since I was a reservist, my cancer did get a remission after 6 months at treatment at Brooke Army Medical Center in Lackland Air Force Base. But because I was a reservist, and what most people don't realize, even though you deploy with your active component should it go to Iraq and Afghanistan, these other deployments, you don't necessarily have a job or a base to come back to. And so basically the 6 months that I was at Brooke Army Medical Center, that was my home address because there was nothing to go back to in New Orleans. And at that particular time, one time getting ready to get discharged from the hospital, is when I realized the lack of supportive services for women veterans, and especially those with children. On the opposite side, there were hundreds of transitional housing facilities for male veterans, thousands of programs that assisted them with getting back on their feet from an employment perspective, anything under the sun that you could think of. But at that particular moment is when I recognized that America had forgotten about the women who had also fought, bled, and died alongside their brothers. And so once I was able to get myself back on my feet, I decided to found an organization that can help other women veterans that may have fell in my position to get back in their feet as well. And since opening up our first home in 2011, we have 3 homes since then and have assisted 150 women veterans and their children. And I am very proud of this because we have done all of this without any federal or state funding. It's come basically from the American people stepping up and finally paying women veterans with their proper respects. From an employment perspective, joblessness does lead to homelessness. And what I found is, although there are programs that are now accepting women and male veterans, from an employment perspective, it's across the board that the help is needed. But the programs are not also realizing that half of our population as women veterans are single mothers. So while they're in fact trying to meet the needs of the women, they are not meeting the needs of the children. So although you may be able to get these jobs, if you have no one to help you with your children, if you don't have anywhere to stay, it kind of compounds the problem. So once we're looking at helping veterans from a perspective, we need to look at a total community perspective of what can we do to help them while they're getting their job training, while they're doing their resume writing, what can we do to also help them take care of their children, so in its totality, all of their needs are being met.
Wonderful.
Because we're in Washington, D.C., obviously we have the opportunity to impact policy. And Tanya, the White House has done a lot of work on aligning military skills with workforce needs. And the 4 areas I found very interesting were truck driving, technology, education, teaching, and medic. One of our sponsors for today, Pepsi, actually employs the largest number of veterans across the country. I'm just curious, knowing that as business owners and nonprofit founders, how do you maneuver into that, and do you have ideas as business owners on how to offer what you can as far as employment to veterans in thinking about it and aligning those 4 categories, if that makes sense?
Well, I can start that conversation. I do own a trucking company too, so it's kind of weird. And I think we had this conversation about trucking and the loneliness being on the road and have to be prepared for that. And it's not necessarily have been a good match for the veterans that we've hired in that position. But what we do at IME is that we recognize, because we're in the defense space, we know that the people who know our jobs best are those individuals coming right out of uniform. And so I do a lot of recruiting, and my staff does a lot of recruiting while you're in that uniform. We want to see that demeanor, we want to see what you're doing, we want to see how you're interacting, and we also want to see the educational level that you bring to the table. So we try to put together a program where we actively seek out veterans right at the beginning. When we're looking for opportunities, we want to make sure that we bring in people. I mean, we play White House exercises. We just did a cybersecurity exercise. We took down a national grid, things of that nature. Well, we want the people who play in that space, the NSA folks, the military comms folks that are in that space. So we actively have to put out a call for recruitment. When we do that, we also have to make sure we balance our need for personnel with our company culture and our values, because this has to align. We have to make sure that those individuals know that I'm not, even though I'm the owner, but I'm not the admiral. I'm not going to talk to you like an admiral. I'm not going to give you all these orders. I'm a very hands-off. I believe I give you a rope. I give you a long rope. And if you're going to hang yourself, you're going to hang yourself. I mean, because I believe at the expertise and the boutiqueness of our company, you have to bring it. And we want them to bring it at a very high level. And in order to do that, you don't want anybody riding your back. It's been interesting because a lot of the veterans that we've hired, Lindsay, they've actually wanted us to ride their back. They were so used to that, Twyla, what's next? And I'm like, what do you mean what's next? You know step 2? And they're like, yeah, but you got to tell me. No, and it's one of those things where you have to flex. And I say this because if I wasn't a person that had supported the warfighter for 9.5 years prior to opening my business, I wouldn't have known how to make that adjustment. I supported admirals. I supported generals. I worked at the White House. I was the I-Tree strategic planner too for a couple of months, or about almost a year, for Bill Clinton. So I knew that whole command and control and the respect. And if I didn't have that, I think I would be kind of lost with some of the military personnel that I bring in, because we bring in a lot of individuals that are very high ranking. And so it comes with that comes some challenges, because it's like, who's in charge? Don't you know where I used to work and who I work for? And so you have to kind of balance those things. And I think it's funny that this conversation is about women, because my problems that I've normally encountered are with the officers that are non-female. The women that we've actually put in place, they bring a different camaraderie of working together. And I think it just has to do a little bit more with that maternal instinct of being a partner in a team and working as a team. And I'd be I would be remiss if I didn't say this. Sometimes it's very challenging dealing with the senior male officers, because I look like their daughter. I've been told that. You're like my kid. And I'm like, but I'm your boss, and I sign your check. So you kind of have to do a lot of finagling. So with us, we put a solid program in place that we hope is a repeatable model. It's all about making sure you can get out and get your message across. It is a different world being a consultant versus being in boots and uniform, and it's a different world. So a lot of the times what we've asked a couple of the people that we've went out to ask to come to work with IME, we've asked them to take about a 2-week holiday on the government and actually come and intern with us. And that's helped, because I think they have to see what we do in a different light. It was very challenging one time when we hired an officer and he didn't have a suit. Everything was military attire. And we were like, well, where's your suit? And he's like, I don't have one. And I'm like, you can afford a suit. I know you. He's like, right, but I've never had to wear one. And then he showed up with the suit and he forgot to tie. And it was like, okay, so you got most of it right. But it was one of those things where, you have to realize they're going through a transition. It's got to be scary for them coming into our world. And just like for my non-military folks, it's scary to see an admiral or a general walk in, because everybody tense up like, Twyla, what is he going to tell us? And I'm like, well, he's just an average person. He's an average guy. He's part of the team. So it's one of those things where it's a learning curve. So we actually do like some role playing in those 2 weeks that they take off, where they see us in some of our program meetings, and then we tell us a little bit about your experience. Tell us how many people you led. What was your management style? So we can kind of get a flavor for them. And prior to hiring them, it gives us an opportunity to tell whether or not they'll be a great fit for us, because we are a little non-traditional in the company, and so I want to make sure we be able to bring that type of flavor.
Jasmine, I would like for you to speak to this too, because of your work. Like, as you mentioned, it's not just homelessness, it's joblessness that leads to homelessness oftentimes. And what, if anything, is Final Salute or any of your external work? What are you doing to sort of tackle that? Is there training? Is there education?
I will tell you, we've been just lucky. We're not really lucky. Well, we're dealing with a population who's, they've had leadership, they've had experience, they've had responsibility. So it's not, because when people think about homeless, they think of, living under the bridge or sleeping on the park bench. They don't realize that there are phases, to this and different components that go into what makes up a homeless person, or in my case, a homeless woman veteran. But these women still have great skills. They're very remarkable. They're not on their last leg. And so, all of them that have come into our program have been able to get a job and get very good jobs, because we have helped them in facilitating to meet their needs and their individual goals. A lot of the programs that I've seen as veterans are developing programs with the mindset that they know what veterans need, as opposed to asking them, what are your needs? Where do you see yourself? And point blank period, no woman likes to be told what to do. So if you're
very true.
So if you're asking her what does she want to do and how can you help her get to that place where she wants to be, they just go at it. There's no extensive handhold or anything needed, because again, these are veterans. They've done that. They've led teams. What I've seen in the civilian world is you see a lot of these company CEOs that'll go on the TVs, or they'll go to these shop fairs and they say, hey, we want to hire veterans, and we want to do X, Y, and Z. The issue is the CEO is not the person that's getting that resume in HR and doesn't know what they're looking at. In addition to what's on that resume, what's not always accounted for is people don't know how to, take in what leadership they've done, what they've done from a leadership perspective, leading people in a combat, leading teams, building, systems, and just, going into situations and making things happen. Those are skills that from any military perspective, from any military person, whether they've been enlisted or officer, that you can always count on having and giving them that guidance. Yes, we like structure. We like to know, where's the operations order?
Yes.
What are we doing next? Who are we working with? Where's our objective? That's just us. We're sorry.
Right. But that helps us, though. That actually helps us build out processes that it didn't have. So it's a really good blend of being able to receive, not just be able to give out. You can't just give out orders, even as a CEO. You got to be able to receive that feedback. And we've gotten some amazing feedback from our veterans that come in and say, hey, you might want to document this process, and we can streamline it by doing X, Y, Z. So I would agree with you.
Yeah, and ironically, I was actually at 88 Mike, which is a motor transport operator when I was enlisted in the military. So I don't know what Pepsi is, but I've had my time with the trucks too. But sometimes you don't always want to do what you've done for 20 years or 15 years or 10 years. And so sometimes that transition is, I want to do something new. But, people looking at the experience you've had, hey, we want you to do this. I have no desire to drive trucks anymore, but sometimes that transition is, trying to branch out into something new. I tell people that, we were civilians before we joined the military, so we're not, just a bunch of wild animals that are unleashed upon America. We don't know what to do. But the hardest part of transitioning is in the military, you were just part of a team. When you had a problem, you had someone on your right and your left, you had someone above you can go to. Once you become a veteran, you become an individual. Right. And that is the scariest part. You don't have those connections anymore, those people to go to and bounce off, ideas. You get a bag of brochures and numbers and handouts, and that becomes the rest of your life. Once you start transitioning out, once you become a veteran, it's too late to start looking at, okay, what I want to do. And although some of these military programs are great, it's not the military's responsibility to teach me how to be a civilian and teach me to transition into civilian life. It was their responsibility to teach me how to be a soldier, and that they did very well. So I think the lack of that transitioning is on the American people part. So all they're doing is saying, shaking your hand, thank you for your service. There's a lot more that could be done, once we could get out to make us then feel like we're part of the American family.
I was actually going to be my next question, because a few people have asked, why are you honoring female veterans? Because we're not a veterans organization. I don't claim to be a veterans organization. But I did see the need. What I wanted to ask was, what can we do as regular citizens to help with that transition, and what can we do as a collective, as individuals, in your estimation?
Do you want to come?
I would say my focus would be more on not people who did long enlistments, not officers. It's the younger people who are doing maybe 1 or 2 enlistments and then leaving the service. Because unfortunately, like in my case, at 17 to join, I was a child. I left my parents' home and the public school system, and I joined the military. That provided me with clothing, food, shelter, health insurance. They told me where to work, what to do, how to get there. They mapped out my life. And so the problem is whenever I left that system, I had never made a decision for myself. I did not know how to get the electric turned on because they provided electricity for me. And understanding that some of these younger people applying for these jobs where you see that they have given service to their country. I can imagine I did not have the best resume because I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I knew I didn't want to do what I had been doing. And so maybe as an employer, looking at some of the people coming to you who, they are not officers. They are not retiring and getting a retirement. They may, in fact, still very much be, maybe not children, but definitely young adults. And they may need for you to kind of investigate, pull it out of. Maybe they have skill sets, but they're not presenting it to you in the best of ways and seeing how you can utilize them within your organization. Some of them, in fact, are going to need a chance.
Can I comment on that as well? I think we all have to look at what we do. I think if everybody looks in their own private circle, you know someone that's either a veteran or is in the military right now that's coming out or is coming back home. Everybody knows someone. And I think it behooves us, because one of the things that I think a lot of people have done is that you've celebrated the fact that they're fighting for us, but we're not helping them actually understand when they get back what to do to get to the next level. I mean, we have to be realistic with them. I had a vet tell me, Twyla, you're very harsh on my resume. I said, I'm not harsh. I'm just telling you what you need to get this job. And she said, but I'm a vet, and this is the true story. You have to take my service into account. I said, you have to learn how to compete amongst everyone. And it takes all of us to help people be realistic. If you don't have the best resume, don't sugarcoat someone just because they came back from Afghanistan and say, oh, you did a great job, I'm so glad you're home, your resume is great, I'm going to send it out to 15 people. And you know how many resumes I get every week from veterans, and their resumes are horrific. Horrific. So you've done them no due diligence. You've done them no favor, because when it comes to me and I see that, and then I compare that to a person who may have had it done for $50 from someone else that looks sharp and articulate, and it's talking about all the processes of teamwork and team building and things of that nature, that's what they have to compete with. So I think it's for everyone to be honest with the people that share information with. I know I get calls a lot, not just because I'm a business owner, but people know I know other people. A lot of people call me just to say, hey, can you get my resume to Booz Allen? Can you get my resume to Northrop Grumman? Can you get my... It would be, first of all, I don't refer anybody that I don't believe in, and I'm not going to send over junk. So because of my own personal characteristics and quality, I take the time to actually help edit that resume to make sure it stands out like a sore thumb. And then I say, hey, I back this person. Hire them if I don't have any opportunity. So I do think we all have to be real with everyone that comes back. There are some individuals that are not prepared. There are some individuals that have come back with some challenges that are not necessarily ready for that type of environment where it is a little bit more aggressive. Remember, we're for profit. So not that we're going to go cutting people's throats, but we in the game to be in the game. I'm not here. I mean, I have a charity organization that I fund, but we're in it to be profitable and to also make sure that everyone on the team is profitable. And to do that, you got to have the best players all rowing in the same direction in the boat. And so if you don't have that, I think it's key that we really be real with individuals. I mean, I support the warfighter more than anyone. And I look at my dad and the wounds he has on his back. He was a fighter in the Army. So, you know, I believe in what they've done, and I say thank you. Thank you both for your service. I mean, thank you. And so to do that, and part of my thanks is to say I want to look back and make sure that you can get the best opportunity when you come home. So I think we all need to look at that. And maybe this weekend or this week, you know, some veterans say, send me your resume. Let me take a look at it for free and see if I can help you edit that. Or maybe I can make a couple calls on your behalf. And